Good morning and welcome to all the family members, Gold Star family members, veterans, patriots, distinguished guests, fellow Americans. I'd first like to thank Rich Munoz, director here for the Mountain Home National Cemetery, for inviting me to come and speak today. Earlier last week, Rich gave me an amazing tour of this special and sacred ground where heroes rest. He explained the operations in their entirety and the effort put into getting everything right. Perhaps one of the most impressive takeaways for me was the care and the attention to detail that each member of Rich's team has for what they do here every day. It was clear to me their work is more than a job, it's a calling. It's an act of dedicated service, of love, and respect for the 17,000 plus who have been laid to rest here. Regardless of whether there's inclement weather or some kind of challenge, Rich and his team are up to the task and fully committed. Their ability to steward the memory of the fallen is nothing short than amazing. They make those veterans who have passed on, they make sure they're honored and treated with the utmost of dignity. In my time in the military, I spent several years as a senior non-commissioned officer, and in my later years I had the opportunity to brief a number of general officers, or GOs, as we call them. And it was taught to me very early, if you want to be successful, you need to know the 4 B's. You need to be brief, you need to be brilliant, you need to be bold, and you need to be gone. So with that in mind, I will endeavor to give you the best I have. I know we've already heard a little bit about the origins of Memorial Day. If you were to ask me how to be succinct in just a few short words, what does that mean? I would say remembrance, and it's about love and respect. Let me paraphrase it another way. In 2 Samuel chapter 33, that chapter is summarized, valor matters. For those that still aren't sure, I'll leave you the words of President Calvin Coolidge, our 30th President of the United States from 1923 to 29. He said it this way: "The nation which forgets its defenders will itself soon be forgotten." Maybe you like a little more intensity, so we can go with the words of General George S. Patton Jr. of World War II fame. He said, and I quote, "A man who does not know history is doomed to repeat it." So we've heard already how Memorial Day started as Decoration Day. But I'd like to add in there the proclamation that General John Logan, National Commander of the Army of the Republic, made when this was all started. And I want you to pay particular attention to the last 2 lines of this. Again, done, as we've already heard, back in 1868 with the purpose for strewing flowers and otherwise decorating the graves of our comrades who died in the defense of this country. The observance has no form or ceremony that's prescribed, but posts and comrades will in their own way arrange such fitting services and testimonials of respect as circumstances may permit. But importantly, it says, it goes on, "Let us in this solemn presence renew our pledges to aid and assist those who have been left among us as the sacred charges of our nation's gratitude, the soldiers and sailors, widow and orphan." You've already heard it this morning once, but as I was preparing, the words are echoing through my mind from John chapter 15, verse 13, the words of Jesus Christ recorded there, saying, "Greater love hath no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." Since 1775, 1,049,454 men and women have laid down their lives in the service of our country during war. That does not include the civilians that also did. That does not include those servicemen and women or civilians who succumbed to their injuries after they left a battlefield or combat environment. So as you look at those numbers, what is it they all had in common? Every one of them took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. If you get an opportunity to drive around the grounds today, and I hope you will, I hope you look for the Medal of Honor headstones engraved in gold, because there are 4 here at this location. There are 3 Medal of Honor recipients from the Civil War, 1 Medal of Honor recipient from World War II. One of the most recent burials, only a few days ago, as Rich was sharing with me, actually died 76 years ago in November 1950. He died at the Battle of the Chosin Reservoir in Korea. He was none other than a missing Kingsport, Tennessee Army Corporal, George Hagee, finally identified, brought home, and laid to rest. Everyone who served and everyone who died all had this in common. They came to defend the Constitution of the United States. You know, if you were to look at that today, some people would say that's not a document we need anymore. But I'll give you a few points to consider here. It is the oldest Constitution that's written and still in use, written in 1787, providing the foundational legal framework for the United States, separation of powers between the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. It divides authority between the federal government and the states, and it provides mechanisms for amendments, 27 of which exist, not the dissolution or to get rid of it, but to refine it if necessary. And importantly, there are key rights for us listed, especially in the First Amendment. The right to freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, the right to petition your government, the freedom of the press. The Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. So it's not obsolete. If anything, it's more important now than ever before. And of course, it remains the supreme law of the land. If you know about non-commissioned officers, you know they are the keepers of the standard. They are the trainers. They are the teachers. The next generation of warriors learns from those NCOs. So as a former senior NCO, it would only be appropriate for me to kind of point out a couple things. I'll give you the BLUF. It's an Army acronym for bottom line, up front. It has become apparent that many of us as a nation have become complacent. In the Army, we have a saying called complacency kills. It's time to reverse that trend. And if you're not familiar with that, I'll give you a couple numbers. A recent 2023 survey found most Americans suffering from a constitutional confusion. When it comes to the 5 rights contained and guaranteed in the first of those 27 amendments, 23% could not name freedom of speech, 60% were unable to name freedom of religion, 67% could not name the right and the freedom to assemble, 72% could not remember freedom of press, and 91% could not remember the right to petition their government. There were 17% that couldn't name any of the branches of the government. It's hard to take an oath to defend something you don't know or understand or love and respect. For our forefathers, though, they understood the Constitution, and they showed up to defend it. Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin, and former Delta Force commander, has written a book about the warrior soul. He said that a person with a warrior soul has a transcendent cause. It requires something bigger than themselves, something bigger than their business, their pocketbook, their career, making money. The fallen we remember today all had a warrior soul in a transcendent cause. It's embodied in the Constitution. For many, it included the belief in God. As I reflect today on my own experiences about Memorial Day, I have a couple I'll share briefly. I was deployed to Baghdad, Iraq twice as a first sergeant. The first time was April 2006 to 2007. I was there before the surge started, and when the first cavalry came in, when the surge started in Baghdad. I'm often reminded of those days. I remember in the summer of 2006, I noticed some of my troops were getting very complacent. We had experienced early successes traversing the city, doing missions, and I was concerned about their mental state. They were getting cocky. I knew I had to reverse that. I knew I had to instill vigilance and attention to detail. And that's when a young female captain from Mortuary Affairs approached me and said, "I need help, First Sergeant." I said, "What do you need?" She said, "I need soldiers, if they're not outside the wire on mission, to be here to render honors when the fallen go home for their angel flight." And I said, "Done. I'll have you some troops out. I don't know how many and I don't know when. It depends on the missions. But we'll help where we can." And that did a lot to have my young soldiers that weren't busy that day to be there to render a hand salute and go to present arms as the body bags passed by and were loaded on the Black Hawk. They saluted a second time as they were loaded, and they saluted a third time as that Black Hawk did the angel flight and flew off. I remember one day I was looking down at one of the body bags going past me, and it was half full. And I was talking to God quietly, and I was saying, "God, thank you. These are not my men. Thank you that our unit has enjoyed success so far. We're in center mass at the point of gravity in downtown Baghdad, and we've been very blessed, but everywhere around us, people are getting hit." And I said, "For this person here, Lord, why them? I'm thankful it's not our men, but why them?" And I heard immediately in my mind, it is the blood of the patriots that fertilizes the fields of freedom. That would be something I would be thinking on a helipad with body bags going past me. That's nothing new that's been spoken. It's been said for generations. Perhaps you're familiar with who said it earlier, where it's recorded from November of 1787. 239 years ago, a man named Thomas Jefferson penned a letter to his friend, William Stephen Smith, son-in-law of John Adams. And he said, "The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants." If you're in the Army, you'd probably say "hooah" after hearing that. You might think that's a true statement, and there is truth to it. You might think it sounds patriotic. Until it's someone you love or someone you care about that has refreshed that tree. Then it hurts. Once that precious loved one is gone, there's a hole left that only they could have filled. During that rotation, there were 343 U.S. combat deaths in the city of Baghdad. Several of those were from my battalion, the 414th Civil Affairs Battalion. I remember the KIAs, the killed in action, Captain Shane Mahaffey, Specialist Theodore Torres, Staff Sergeant Nathan Vaco, First Sergeant Carlos Sainz, Staff Sergeant Carlos Dominguez, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Holland, Staff Sergeant Ronald Paulson, Captain Brian Freeman. And I remember what would be one of the last POWs in Iraq, who later became KIA, because I was the first military service person to be notified he was captured, Specialist Ahmed Altai. I remember these patriots. I remember when and where they died. Thinking about those losses and the others I've experienced over the years, it's sad. But then I have to remember the advice of General George S. Patton. He says, instead of mourning those who died, we should thank God that such men lived. In 2003, before returning to the military after an 11-year break in service, my family celebrated 4th of July on the Potomac with a dinner cruise. We'd been up there for a few days. We had gone to the sites, seen the memorials and museums. And I took my 15-year-old son to visit the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. And then we walked over to the Korean War Memorial. And I wanted to pause there and point out for my son to see. And we both took in the big inscription over the men on patrol at that memorial. It said, and I quote, "Freedom is not free. All gave some, and some gave all." If today's difficult for you because you lost a family member, a loved one, a close friend, I sincerely pray the Lord Jesus Christ and His Holy Spirit will comfort you and give you a lasting peace. I pray you're thankful for your loved one that lived and the impact they made on your life. If you've experienced the loss, I offer you my condolences. Because of your loss, my children and grandchildren live in a land where they enjoy liberty. So as a wrap up, I want to leave you with the words of Ronald Reagan before he became the governor of California, October 27th, 1964. He said, I quote, "Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction." And I would add, knowing that, we have to stay vigilant. We have to be responsible. So let us commit to honor the ultimate sacrifice of these Americans, but do it with profound gratitude. Let us remember that it was the love and commitment to our constitutional republic that these fallen took an oath and faithfully served even to the point of death. Let us avoid complacency and historical apathy. Let us make every effort to know and understand the shared heritage that binds all of us together, the principles and elements of the Constitution of the United States. And let us boldly teach that next generation what it means that there are things we love and we stand for them. Things that are sacred, things that are cherished, things that are precious, things we love like our families and our freedom. And we will stand for them. Let us show love and respect for those who have fallen, so that these men and women will not have lived in vain, because valor matters. Thank you for the opportunity to share. God bless you and the Gold Star families. God bless America.